We are now 101 years after the discovery of insulin. And the goal when insulin was discovered and then spread throughout the world was that everybody would have access. And that actually wasn't the case after the discovery of insulin, and sadly, it's not the case now. And what's very important, and what came out in our session yesterday, is that in my talk, which related to the United States, but all over the world, this is as much of a political issue as anything else. And unfortunately, when you look at what has happened in the United States over the years with insulin costs, it really is a political issue. Insulin costs have skyrocketed, no matter how you look at it. And what that has done is it has reduced the access, especially to our more vulnerable populations. We know in the years 2009 to 2015, there was an increase in ketoacidosis, both in the emergency department and in the hospitalizations. And what I am most interested in is what we will see with DKA during COVID. We don't have those data yet. My guess is it went up even more due to the issues with insulin access. We know in the United States from several surveys that 1 out of 4 Americans on insulin have to ration their insulin. And what we also know is that insulin rationing or insulin omission unintentionally is the #1 cause for ketoacidosis, which obviously is life-threatening. And so if we go deep into the reasons for this, the real question is why? Traditionally, we have pointed our fingers at the pharmaceutical industry, and I think at least now in 2022, that's the wrong place to point our fingers. At the end of the day, the real place to point our fingers, there's really 2 places. One is the middlemen, or the middle people, to be more precise about it, and the other is the politicians. So let's start with the politicians. One can go on a website called opensecrets.org and actually see where the politicians receive their lobbying money from. And as it turns out, in the last year, out of over 400 entities lobbying our politicians in Washington, 3 of the top 25 companies are the manufacturers of insulin. Does this influence the manufacturers? It might. I think it's certainly a possibility. What I know for sure is that every physician in this country has very open and transparently available to the public the sunshine laws, where we actually have to show who we work with from the pharmaceutical industry, whether it's a gift or a research study. It's not as transparent with the politicians. So I actually have a problem with that. But the other bigger problem is who is really profiting from this increase in insulin costs, and why have the politicians not done anything, at least not as of yet? And the real issue is these middlemen, and it's not just the PBMs, but the PBMs, the wholesalers, and the pharmacies. Their profits in the last 5 years have skyrocketed, while in actuality, the pharmaceutical companies, their profits from insulin have gone down. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still profitable, but the profits have actually gone down. And we are talking massive increases for these middle people. And so the good news is that there is going to be a vote, hopefully this summer, by the Senate for an insulin cap, a $35 per month insulin cap. The details of that are not known, but this insulin cap has passed Congress. And what's important to note about the congressional passage of this bill is that only 12 Republicans voted for it. The other 193 voted against an Affordable Insulin Act for legislation. And I agree with the fact that this doesn't really fix the problem. What it will do is it will spread out the cost. I totally understand that. But as a physician caring for hundreds of patients with diabetes and seeing patients really struggle with affordable insulin, this is a potential tremendous benefit for these patients. with the understanding that all of society is going to have to pay for it, because politically there is no other way anybody can figure out. I am hopeful that this bill does pass the Senate and then is signed by the President, but time will tell. If that does happen, I think a lot of the insulin rationing we have seen in this country the last 20 years will diminish, if not go away completely. At least that's my hope.